I'm Erin, 27, and for 8 years I trained special forces in hand-to-hand combat. Most people in my life never knew about my military background, including my girlfriend Sophia. That is until her brother Logan broke my father's arm in 4 places at a family gathering. What happened next shocked everyone. Logan had no idea who he was really dealing with, and neither did Sophia's family. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you want to hear how I defended my family using my Special Forces training without causing permanent damage, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel now. My story begins with my military background. I enlisted in the Army right after high school, driven by a desire to serve my country and challenge myself. During my 8 years of service, I discovered I had a natural talent for hand-to-hand combat. My superiors noticed this ability too, and eventually I was selected to train Special Forces operators in close-quarters combat techniques. For 5 years, I taught elite soldiers how to defend themselves in the most dangerous situations imaginable. When I completed my service, I was ready for a change. The constant intensity of military life had taken its toll, and I yearned for something different. Using the GI Bill, I went back to school and became a physical therapist. I found deep satisfaction in helping people recover from injuries, using my knowledge of the human body for healing instead of combat. It felt like the perfect transition into civilian life. I was careful about sharing my military background with new people I met. Not because I was ashamed of my service, quite the opposite. I was incredibly proud of what I'd accomplished. But I'd noticed that once people learned I had trained Special Forces, they started treating me differently. Some became intimidated, others overly curious, asking intrusive questions about operations or techniques. I just wanted to be known for who I was now, not solely defined by my military past. That's why when I met Sophia at a small coffee shop downtown, I kept my history vague. I told her I'd served in the Army, but I didn't elaborate on my specific role. Sophia was working on her laptop designing jewelry. She had accidentally knocked over my coffee while gesturing during a phone call and insisted on buying me another. That simple interaction turned into hours of conversation. Sophia was everything I wasn't: artistic, spontaneous, and from a privileged background. Her family owned a chain of luxury hotels, and she had grown up with every advantage. Despite this, she was down-to-earth and compassionate. She volunteered at an arts program for underprivileged kids and was genuinely interested in people's stories. We quickly fell into a comfortable relationship, and 18 months later, we were discussing moving in together. It wasn't until about 6 months into our relationship that Sophia mentioned her brother Logan. Even then, she was vague, saying only that he could be difficult and that they didn't always get along. Over time, I pieced together that Logan had serious issues. He had been kicked out of multiple private schools, had problems with substance abuse, and had never held a job despite being in his 30s. Sophia's parents had always bailed him out of trouble and continued to support him financially. "He's got a good heart, really," Sophia would say when she talked about him. "He's just struggling to find his way." But I noticed the tension in her voice whenever Logan came up in conversation and how she would quickly change the subject. My own family couldn't have been more different. I was raised by my father, Sam, after my mother died of cancer when I was just 8 years old. Dad was a firefighter who worked double shifts to make sure I had everything I needed. He taught me the value of hard work, integrity, and standing up for others. He supported my decision to join the military, even though I could tell he worried about me constantly. Now retired, he volunteered at the local community center and spent his free time woodworking in his garage. After dating for over a year, Sophia suggested it was time for our families to meet. Her parents were hosting a garden party at their estate, and she thought it would be the perfect opportunity. I was nervous about how my down-to-earth father would fit in with Sophia's wealthy family, but I knew how important it was to her. Dad was excited to meet the woman who had made me so happy and assured me everything would be fine. "I may not know which fork to use for the salad," he joked, "but I can make conversation with anyone." Sophia became increasingly anxious as the day approached. She called her mother daily to make preparations and fretted about every detail. I assumed she was just worried about making a good impression, but looking back, I should have recognized her behavior for what it was: fear of what might happen when Logan was involved. "Are you sure your brother will be there?" I asked the night before the gathering. "Probably," she said, not meeting my eyes. Mom said she'd talk to him about behaving. That should have been my first warning sign. The fact that an adult needed to be told to behave at a family gathering wasn't normal. But I was so focused on supporting Sophia that I brushed aside my concerns and prepared myself for an uncomfortable but manageable afternoon. I had no idea that the next day would change everything. When we arrived at Sophia's family estate, I was struck by the sheer size of the property. The driveway seemed to go on forever, winding through perfectly manicured gardens before reaching a house that looked more like a small hotel. Dad whistled low under his breath, but kept his composure as we parked among luxury vehicles that probably cost more than his entire pension. "Remember, they're just people," I whispered to him as we walked to the entrance. He squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Don't worry about me, kiddo. I've faced burning buildings. I think I can handle a garden party." Sophia's parents, Patricia and Richard, greeted us at the door. Patricia was elegant in an expensive-looking sundress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Richard was tall and imposing in designer casual wear that somehow still looked formal. They were polite but reserved, offering firm handshakes and practiced smiles. "So wonderful to finally meet you both," Patricia said, her eyes quickly assessing us. "Sophia has told us so much about you." "All good things, I hope," my father replied with his easy charm. I could see Patricia softening slightly at his genuine warmth. Richard led us through the house to the back garden, making small talk about the weather and asking vague questions about our drive. The interior of the home was impressive. High ceilings, artwork that looked museum quality, and furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. I felt myself tensing up, suddenly aware of the gap between our worlds. In the garden, tables had been set up under elegant white canopies. Waitstaff moved silently among the guests, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. There were about 20 people present, mostly family, friends, and relatives. Sophia quickly appeared at my side, looking beautiful but tense in a blue summer dress. "You're here," she said, kissing me on the cheek and hugging my father. "Let me introduce you to everyone." Sophia's sister Hannah approached us first. Unlike her parents, Hannah's welcome seemed genuine. She had Sophia's same warm smile and lack of pretension. "I've been dying to meet you both," she said, linking her arm through mine. "Sophia won't stop talking about you, Aaron. And Mr. Carter, I hear you were a firefighter. That's amazing." "Sam, please," my father insisted. "And it was just a job. Not nearly as impressive as this place." Hannah laughed. "Trust me, after a while, all this just becomes wallpaper. I'd much rather hear about saving lives." With Hannah's help, the initial introductions went smoothly. Dad was soon chatting comfortably with Richard's brother about fishing, while I found myself in conversation with Hannah and a cousin who worked in healthcare. The food was excellent, the weather perfect, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to relax. "Where's Logan?" I finally asked Sophia quietly when we had a moment alone. She glanced at her watch, her expression tightening. "He's running late. Mom said he promised to come, but you know how he is about time." The worry in her voice was unmistakable. "Is everything okay? You seem stressed." "I'm fine," she insisted, squeezing my hand. "I just want everything to be perfect." It was nearly an hour into the party when Logan finally made his entrance. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Conversation faltered, and several guests suddenly found reasons to move to different parts of the garden. Even from a distance, I could tell he was intoxicated. His movements were too loose, his voice too loud. "The party can finally start," he announced, grabbing a champagne flute from a passing server and draining it in one gulp. "Where's Sophia's new girlfriend? I want to meet the lucky lady." Sophia tensed beside me. "I should go talk to him." "We can both go," I offered, but she shook her head. Let me handle him first. I watched as she approached her brother, speaking quietly to him. Whatever she said only seemed to amuse him. He laughed loudly, throwing an arm around her shoulders that looked more like a restraint than an affectionate gesture. Patricia hurried over, her smile fixed firmly in place. Logan, darling, come get something to eat. You must be starving. I'm more interested in meeting the girlfriend, he said, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. His gaze was unsettling, calculating and cold despite his apparent intoxication. He made his way toward us, ignoring his mother's attempts to distract him. Up close, I could see the family resemblance to Sophia, the same blue eyes and defined cheekbones. But where her features were soft and kind, his were sharp and hostile. So you're the one who turned my sister gay, he said by way of introduction, looking me up and down. Logan, Sophia hissed, mortified. My father stepped forward, offering his hand. I'm Sam Carter, Aaron's father. Nice to meet you, Logan. Logan ignored the outstretched hand, instead turning to Sophia. Seriously? This is who you bring home. What happened to that guy from the Anderson family? At least he had money. That's enough, Richard said, finally intervening. Logan, why don't you get some food and join us when you're feeling more sociable? Logan smirked, but didn't move. I'm being perfectly sociable, just getting to know the new additions to our circle. He turned back to my father. So, firefighter, huh? Must be quite a step down from the company Sophia usually keeps. I felt my muscles tensing, years of training automatically assessing him as a potential threat. His stance, the way his weight shifted slightly forward, the controlled aggression in his voice. These were all warning signs I'd been trained to recognize. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that we were at a family gathering, not in a combat situation. Actually, my father replied calmly. I've found that what you do is far less important than how you treat people. The simple dignity in his response only seemed to irritate Logan further. His eyes narrowed as he reached for another drink. How philosophical. Did you read that on a greeting card? The conversation around us had died completely. Everyone was watching the uncomfortable exchange, but no one seemed willing to intervene. Over the next hour, Logan became increasingly obnoxious. He interrupted conversations, made inappropriate comments about other guests, and continued to drink heavily. Sophia apologized repeatedly while her parents made weak attempts to control him. I maintained my composure, but I was growing increasingly concerned about the escalating situation. My training had taught me to read body language to identify threats before they materialized. Logan's behavior was setting off all my internal alarms. He was becoming more agitated, his movements more erratic. When he accidentally bumped into me, spilling wine on my dress, I knew it was deliberate. His apology was mockingly insincere. So clumsy of me, he said with a smirk. Must be all this cheap wine going to my head. I excused myself to clean up in the bathroom, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. Looking in the mirror, I reminded myself why we were there. For Sophia, for our relationship. I could handle one difficult afternoon. When I returned to the garden, I found my father standing alone by the buffet table. His expression was concerned. You okay, kiddo? He asked quietly. I'm fine, Dad, just trying to keep the peace for Sophia's sake. He nodded, understanding as always. He's got some serious issues, that young man. Not your fault, or Sophia's either, from what I can see. Parents seem to have enabled him for years. Let's just get through the day, I suggested. We can leave early if it gets worse. No need to ruin Sophia's day. I've dealt with worse than him on the job. At least he's not on fire. His attempt at humor made me smile despite the tension. As we rejoined the party, I noticed Logan had turned his attention to an older couple making loud comments about their outdated clothing. The woman looked close to tears, while her husband was becoming visibly angry. Sophia was across the garden, deep in conversation with Hannah, and seemingly unaware of the brewing conflict. Logan's behavior continued to deteriorate. He knocked over a tray of glasses with a careless gesture, laughed when the server had to clean it up, and made crude jokes within earshot of elderly relatives. I watched Richard pull him aside for what appeared to be a stern talk, but Logan simply shrugged him off and reached for another drink. When he returned to the main area, his focus shifted entirely to my father. Perhaps he'd sensed that I wasn't giving him the reaction he wanted, or maybe he just saw my dad as an easier target. He sidled up to where we were standing with Hannah and her husband. "So, Sam," Logan said deliberately, using my father's first name without invitation. "What's it like being a glorified ladder climber? Get a lot of cats out of trees." "Logan, please," Hannah interjected. "No one wants to hear this." "I'm just making conversation," he insisted. "Learning about the common folk." My father remained remarkably calm. "Actually, most of my work involved structure fires, car accidents, and emergency medical responses. Not many cats, I'm afraid." "Fascinating," Logan replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And what does that pay exactly enough for that off-the-rack suit you're wearing?" I stepped forward, but my father placed a gentle hand on my arm. His look told me he could handle this. He'd faced worse than a spoiled rich kid with a chip on his shoulder. "My pension is enough for my needs," he replied evenly. "I was fortunate to have a job that gave my life meaning." Logan's eyes narrowed at the implied criticism. "Meaning? Please, you ran into burning buildings because you weren't smart enough to do anything else." Richard finally appeared, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Logan, that's enough. Apologize to Mr. Carter immediately." "For what? Telling the truth." Logan moved closer to my father, invading his personal space. "Everyone here is thinking it. I'm just saying it." I could see my father was uncomfortable with the physical proximity, but he stood his ground, maintaining his dignity. Logan's gestures became more animated, his hands moving dangerously close to my father's face as he continued his verbal assault. I shifted my position slightly, preparing to intervene if necessary. Every muscle in my body was tense, my training automatically calculating distances, angles, potential movements. "Your accent? What is that anyway? Some kind of backwoods drawl?" Logan continued, mimicking my father's slight southern accent. "Did you even finish high school?" "I did," my father replied calmly. "And then I went on to paramedic training. Saving lives requires quite a bit of medical knowledge." Logan snorted, reaching for a plate of food from my father's hands and deliberately knocking it to the ground. "Oops. Guess you'll have to get used to cleaning up messes if you're going to hang around with this family." When my father bent to pick up the plate, Logan shoved him with enough force to make him stumble. Something in me snapped to attention, but I held back, giving my father space to handle the situation as he saw fit. He straightened up slowly, his expression serious but controlled. "Young man," he said quietly, "I think you should step back and calm down." What happened next occurred so quickly that most of the guests barely had time to register it. Logan's face twisted with rage at being addressed in such a manner by someone he considered beneath him. With shocking speed, he grabbed my father's right arm, twisting it violently while simultaneously pushing him backward. The sickening sound of breaking bone was audible across the garden, followed immediately by my father's cry of pain. Patricia screamed. Richard shouted Logan's name. Sophia covered her mouth in horror, but I was already moving my body, responding before my conscious mind had fully processed what was happening. In that moment, 8 years of military training took over completely. Time seemed to slow down, just as it always did during combat situations. My focus narrowed, external distractions fading away. I registered every detail with crystal clarity. Logan's stance, his center of gravity, the position of his arms, the distance between us, potential obstacles in my path. I moved with precision, honed through thousands of hours of practice. In 3 quick steps, I was between Logan and my father, who had fallen to his knees, clutching his arm. Logan's expression registered surprise at my sudden appearance, then shifted back to anger. He clearly saw me as no threat, just another obstacle to push aside. "Get out of my way," he spat, raising his hand as if to strike me. I blocked his arm with practiced ease, using minimal force but perfect positioning. The look of shock on his face would have been almost comical under different circumstances. He tried to push past me, but I shifted my weight slightly, redirecting his momentum so he stumbled to the side instead. "What the hell?" he muttered, his alcohol-clouded brain struggling to comprehend what had happened. "You need to back away now," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "An ambulance is needed for my father." Logan's shock quickly turned to outrage. The idea that a woman had just effortlessly blocked him was clearly intolerable to his ego. He lunged forward again, this time with clear intent to harm. I sidestepped smoothly, using his own momentum against him while simultaneously protecting my injured father behind me. "Patricia, call an ambulance," I called out, never taking my eyes off Logan. I could hear someone on the phone in the background, Sophia's tearful voice giving the address. Logan was becoming increasingly frustrated and erratic. Each attempt to get past me was met with precise defensive movements that kept him off balance without causing injury. I was carefully maintaining the line between necessary force and excessive retaliation, mindful of the legal implications. "Who do you think you are?" he shouted, his face red with fury and embarrassment. "You can't touch me. Do you know who my family is?" "I know exactly who you are," I replied steadily. "And I'm not touching you. I'm preventing you from causing further harm." The garden had fallen completely silent except for Logan's labored breathing and my father's pained gasps. Everyone was frozen in place, watching the bizarre confrontation unfold. I could sense their confusion. How was this average-looking woman so effortlessly controlling a man who outweighed her by at least 50 pounds? Logan's next move showed his desperation. He grabbed a heavy stone garden ornament from a nearby table, brandishing it like a club. Several women screamed, and Richard finally started moving toward us, though far too late to be of any help. "Put it down, Logan," I warned, shifting my stance slightly. "You don't want to do this." "Watch me," he snarled, and swung the improvised weapon directly at my head. The moment Logan swung the garden ornament at me, my training kicked into highest gear. Years of muscle memory took over as I executed a perfect sidestep, allowing the heavy object to whistle past my head by mere inches. In the same fluid motion, I captured his extended wrist with both hands, using a joint manipulation technique that immediately caused him to release his grip on the weapon. The stone ornament fell harmlessly to the grass as I maintained control of Logan's wrist, applying precise pressure to a nerve cluster that sent shooting pain up his arm without causing any actual damage. His knees buckled slightly, and I used this moment of weakness to transition into a controlled takedown. Within seconds, I had him face down on the ground, his arms secured behind his back in a standard restraint position. "What the fu—" he gasped, struggling ineffectively against the hold. Every movement he made only increased his discomfort, exactly as the technique was designed to do. "Don't move," I instructed calmly. "I'm not going to hurt you, but I can't let you hurt anyone else." The entire confrontation had taken less than 15 seconds from the moment he swung the ornament to his complete immobilization. The assembled guests stood in shocked silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Sophia was the first to break from her stunned state, rushing to my father's side to check on him. "I'm trained in close-quarters combat," I explained to the stunned onlookers, maintaining my hold on Logan with minimal effort. "I spent 8 years in the Army, 5 of them training Special Forces operators in hand-to-hand techniques. I'm using just enough pressure to keep him contained without causing injury." "Get off me, you crazy bitch!" Logan spat, still struggling despite the pain it caused him. "The police and ambulance have been called," Richard announced, his authoritative voice finally returning. He looked pale and shaken, the carefully constructed facade of family perfection completely shattered. "Aaron is there. Do you need any assistance?" "No, thank you. I can maintain this hold indefinitely if necessary. My voice remained even professional. This wasn't personal for me. It was simply threat neutralization, just as I'd been trained. Patricia approached cautiously, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Please don't hurt him. He's not well. He has problems. I understand, I replied. I'm not hurting him. This is a standard restraint technique designed to control without injury. I'll sue you, Logan shouted, his face pressed against the manicured lawn. I'll have you arrested for assault. Hannah stepped forward, her phone held up. I've recorded everything from the moment you attacked Sam Logan. Everything. So go ahead and try. In the distance, sirens could be heard approaching the estate. I shifted my attention to my father, who was being attended to by one of the guests who mentioned he had medical training. Dad, how bad is it? I called over, maintaining my hold on Logan. Pretty bad, kiddo, he admitted through gritted teeth. Definitely broken. Hurts like hell. The ambulance is almost here, Sophia assured him, holding his uninjured hand. She looked up at me, her expression a complex mixture of shock, fear, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Perhaps awe, perhaps horror. Within minutes, the garden was filled with emergency personnel, paramedics rushing to my father's side, and police officers approaching Logan and me. I have him in a standard restraint hold, I explained to the first officer who reached us. I'm a former military combat instructor. He attacked my father, breaking his arm, then attempted to assault me with that stone ornament. I'm willing to release him to your custody now. The officer nodded, and with practiced coordination, I transferred control to the police, who immediately secured Logan with handcuffs. As they led him away, he continued to shout threats and obscenities, demanding that his parents call their lawyer. I rushed to my father's side, where paramedics were carefully splinting his arm. The initial assessment suggests multiple fractures, one of them told me quietly. We need to get him to the hospital for x-rays and proper treatment immediately. I'm coming with him, I said, taking my father's good hand. I'll drive you both to the hospital, Sophia offered quickly. My car is right outside. As we prepared to leave, Richard approached us, his expression grave. I want to assure you that we will cover all medical expenses. This situation is inexcusable. We're deeply sorry. I nodded acknowledgement, but didn't trust myself to speak. The adrenaline was beginning to wear off, and the full impact of what had happened was setting in. My father was seriously injured. I had been forced to use my military training in a civilian setting, and I had no idea what this meant for my relationship with Sophia. At the hospital, x-rays confirmed what the paramedics suspected. My father's arm was broken in 4 places, requiring surgery to insert pins and plates. As he was being prepped for the procedure, he squeezed my hand weakly. You did good, kiddo, he whispered. Really good, just like I taught you. Stand your ground, but never escalate. I felt tears welling in my eyes. I should have intervened sooner, before he hurt you. No, he said firmly. You gave me the space to handle it myself as long as you could. That's respect. And when it was necessary, you did what you had to do. I'm proud of you. As they wheeled him away to surgery, I turned to find Sophia sitting in the waiting room, her face pale and drawn. The look in her eyes told me our relationship had irrevocably changed in ways neither of us could have anticipated. The days following the incident unfolded in a blur of hospital visits, police statements, and uncomfortable conversations. My father's surgery was successful, but his recovery would be long and painful. 4 fractures required extensive reconstruction with metal plates and screws. The orthopedic surgeon explained he would need months of physical therapy with no guarantee of regaining full function. He's lucky you're a physical therapist, the doctor told me. He'll need specialized care during recovery. I arranged to take time off work to care for him, converting my small home office into a temporary bedroom so he wouldn't have to navigate stairs. Throughout all this, Sophia remained present but distant, as if she were physically there, but emotionally elsewhere. "My parents want to pay for a private nurse," she offered as we left the hospital 3 days after the surgery. "And they'll cover all the medical expenses, of course." "Thank you, but I can take care of him," I replied. "It's what I do professionally, and he's my father." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "The police are pressing charges against Logan despite my parents' efforts. With Hannah's video and all the witness statements, they don't have much choice." I should have felt vindicated by this news, but instead I just felt tired. "How are you handling all this?" "I don't know," she admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm horrified by what Logan did. Absolutely horrified. But he's still my brother, and my parents are devastated. They're checking him into a rehabilitation facility again." "Again?" I questioned. "This has happened before." Sophia looked away. "Not exactly like this, but there have been incidents. Logan has always had anger issues, and with the substances—" "Sophia," I said carefully, "has Logan been violent with you or your family before?" Her silence was answer enough. During the week that followed, Sophia visited less frequently, always with plausible excuses about work or family obligations. When she did visit, our conversations were superficial, carefully avoiding any mention of Logan or the incident. The easy intimacy we had shared for 18 months had vanished, replaced by a politeness that felt worse than outright anger would have. Then the messages from Logan started. Somehow he had gotten my personal phone number. Despite being in rehab, he had access to his phone and used it to send threatening texts. "You humiliated me. No one does that without consequences. You think you're tough? Let's see how tough when you don't see me coming. Your daddy won't always have his little soldier to protect him." I reported the messages to the police, who added them to the case against him, but it did little to ease my growing concern. Logan had been released on bail pending trial, his family's influence ensuring he faced minimal restrictions beyond the voluntary rehab program. When I showed the messages to Sophia, her reaction stunned me. Instead of outrage, she seemed resigned, even defensive. "He's just lashing out because he's embarrassed," she said. "He doesn't really mean it. The rehab program is helping him understand his actions." "Sophia, these are explicit threats," I pointed out. "Against me and my father." "I know how it looks," she admitted. "But you don't understand Logan. This is just how he processes things. He feels cornered right now." I stared at her, unable to comprehend her response. "He broke my father's arm in 4 places. He tried to hit me with a stone ornament that could have killed me, and now he's threatening us both. What exactly am I not understanding?" "It's complicated," she said, her voice small. "He's been through a lot." That conversation marked a turning point. In the days that followed, the strain on our relationship became impossible to ignore. Sophia began subtly suggesting that perhaps I had been excessive in my response to Logan. "Couldn't you have just restrained him without embarrassing him in front of everyone?" she asked one evening as we sat in my living room, the silence between us growing heavier by the day. "Embarrassing him," I repeated, incredulous. "I used the minimum force necessary to prevent him from hurting anyone else. Would you rather I had let him hit me with that garden ornament?" "Of course not," she backpedaled quickly. "I just mean, you're trained. You knew exactly what you were doing. Logan was drunk and emotional." "Being drunk doesn't excuse violence," I said firmly. "And being emotional doesn't justify breaking someone's arm or attempting assault with a weapon." She looked away. "My parents are worried about how this will affect his future. If he gets a criminal record—" "Maybe he should have thought about that before attacking an elderly retired firefighter," I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. The conversation devolved from there. For the first time, all the unspoken class tensions between us bubbled to the surface. Sophia's family believed their wealth and status should somehow shield them from consequences. My background, military working class self-made, was suddenly being framed as aggressive and unyielding rather than disciplined and principled. My family isn't perfect, Sophia admitted during one particularly difficult conversation. But they're good people at heart. They've always protected each other. There's a difference between protection and enabling, I pointed out. Logan needs real help, not more excuses. The final breaking point came when Sophia arrived at my apartment one evening with a proposal from her parents. They wanted to offer a settlement. They would pay all medical expenses, provide a generous additional sum for distress, and in return we would drop all charges against Logan. They just want this to go away quietly, Sophia explained, not quite meeting my eyes. For everyone's sake. I looked at her for a long moment, finally seeing the situation with complete clarity. And what do you want, Sophia? I want things to go back to normal, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I want my girlfriend back and my family intact. I want everyone to move past this and heal. Some things can't be healed by pretending they didn't happen, I said gently. Some actions have consequences that can't be bought off. Can't we just put this behind us? She pleaded. For me, for us, Logan made a terrible mistake, but with treatment and time. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in anger, I interrupted. What Logan did was assault, and his messages show it wasn't a one-time loss of control. It's part of a pattern of behavior that your family has enabled for years. So you won't even consider it for me? The hurt in her voice was genuine, which made it all the more painful. I can't compromise on this, Sophia. Not even for you. Some lines can't be crossed. She left that night with tears in her eyes, and I knew in my heart that our relationship was over. The foundation of trust and shared values that we had built over 18 months had crumbled beneath the weight of family loyalty and fundamentally different views of accountability. Making the decision to end my relationship with Sophia was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Despite everything that had happened, I still loved her. But I couldn't ignore the fundamental values that separated us, especially when my father's safety was at stake. The final conversation happened at a neutral coffee shop away from both my apartment and any of her family's properties. The moment she sat down across from me, I could tell she knew what was coming. I can't do this anymore, I said gently. We want different things, and we see this situation too differently. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, Aaron. Isn't that enough to find a way through this? Sometimes love isn't enough, I replied, fighting back my own tears. I need to be with someone who understands that actions have consequences, who wouldn't ask me to compromise my values or my father's safety. I'm not choosing Logan over you, she protested weakly. Not intentionally, maybe, but you were raised to protect your family above all else, even when they're wrong. I understand that loyalty, but I can't be part of it, not when it means enabling behavior that hurts innocent people. We parted with a long, final embrace. As I watched her walk away, I felt a mixture of heartbreak and relief. The relationship had been important to me, but I knew I had made the right decision. In the weeks that followed, I focused entirely on helping my father recover. I moved him temporarily into my apartment, converting my living room into a rehabilitation space. As a physical therapist, I knew exactly what exercises would help him regain strength and mobility, but it was still difficult to watch him struggle with pain and limited function. You know what's ironic? He said one afternoon during a particularly challenging therapy session. In 30 years as a firefighter, I never broke a bone. I retire, and suddenly I'm full of metal parts. His ability to find humor in the situation amazed me. Despite everything, he maintained his positive outlook and determination. He became my anchor during the difficult emotional aftermath of the breakup. About a month after the separation, I received an unexpected visitor. Hannah Sophia's sister stood at my door holding a small gift basket. Can I come in? she asked hesitantly. I wanted to check on your dad, and you. I invited her in, surprised but curious. Hannah had always been the most genuine member of Sophia's family, and she had stood up to Logan at the garden party. I'm so sorry about everything, she said after greeting my father warmly. What Logan did was inexcusable, and how my family has handled it is even worse. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by her sincerity. That means a lot. As we talked over coffee, Hannah revealed aspects of her family dynamic that Sophia had never shared. Logan's violent tendencies had manifested early, but his parents had always protected him, making excuses and using their influence to make problems disappear. There were incidents in prep school. He put a classmate in the hospital. My parents paid the family off and transferred him to another exclusive school. This pattern has repeated his entire life, she explained. I love my parents, but they created this monster by never holding him accountable. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I admire what you did, both standing up to him and standing by your principles afterward. It's made me reconsider my own complicity in all this. Before she left, Hannah hugged me tightly. Sophia misses you terribly, you know, but this situation has forced her to confront some hard truths about our family. Maybe someday. She left the thought unfinished, and I appreciated her not offering false hope. As my father's condition improved, I found myself looking for ways to channel my emotions productively. I started offering free self-defense classes at the community center, where my father volunteered, focusing specifically on teaching vulnerable populations, women, elderly people, and LGBTQ+ youth. For the first time, I spoke openly about my military background, using those experiences to help others protect themselves. There was something healing about sharing these skills in a constructive way, transforming what had been weapons of war into tools of empowerment and security. 3 months after the incident, with the legal proceedings against Logan still moving slowly through the system, I ran into Sophia at a local farmer's market. The moment was awkward, but not as painful as I had feared. You look good, she said, her eyes taking in my appearance with familiar warmth. How's your dad? Getting better every day. The doctors are impressed with his progress. How are you? I'm changing, she replied thoughtfully. Moving out of my parents' guest house, actually. Getting my own apartment next month. That's a big step, I acknowledged, remembering how comfortable she had been in the safety of her family's wealth. It's time. I need to figure out who I am outside of the family bubble. She paused, then added, Logan's in a long-term residential treatment program in another state. My parents finally realized they couldn't manage this on their own. We parted with a gentle hug and no promises to stay in touch. Some chapters need to close completely before new ones can begin. As winter turned to spring, my father returned to his own home, his arm healed enough to allow independent living. The metal plates would remain permanently a physical reminder of that fateful day, but he regained nearly 90% of his former mobility, a remarkable outcome that the surgeons attributed partly to the intensive therapy I'd provided. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, he joked on his last night at my apartment. Or at least gives you cool scars to show off to the guys at the community center. One evening, as I was closing up after a self-defense class, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Sophia. I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. You were right. About Logan, about my family's patterns, about the difference between protection and enabling. I'm sorry I couldn't see it then. I'm sorry I asked you to compromise your values. You deserved better, and I'm working on becoming someone who would never ask that of anyone. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. It's not about power or control, but about standing firm in your truth, even when it costs you something you love. The letter brought tears to my eyes, not because it rekindled hope for reconciliation, but because it represented growth and healing for both of us. Some relationships aren't meant to last forever, but they can still change us in profound and positive ways. In the years since that garden party, I've rebuilt my life. I expanded my physical therapy practice, specializing in rehabilitation for trauma survivors. I maintain my self-defense classes, drawing on my military experience without being defined by it. My father has become a volunteer speaker at the local VA, sharing his recovery journey with injured veterans. Logan's case eventually ended in a plea deal, less severe than it should have been, but still including mandatory treatment and probation. Hannah keeps in touch, updating me occasionally on family matters. Sophia and I exchange holiday cards, but have not attempted to rebuild what was broken. The experience taught me that true strength isn't about physical power or combat skills, though those served their purpose that day. Real strength lies in knowing your values and standing by them, even when doing so breaks your heart. It's about protecting those you love without becoming overprotective. It's about setting boundaries and recognizing when a relationship, no matter how precious, costs too much of your soul to maintain. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting back. It's walking away from something that's hurting you, even when part of you wants to stay and fix it. And sometimes the most important person to protect is yourself. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between someone you loved and standing up for what's right? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand firm in your truth, even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your boundaries deserve to be respected, and your safety is never something you should have to compromise on.